they're not going to respect you. You want to come across as confident. You want to cross as somebody who is setting an example of how to communicate well. Hi, my name is Dr. Rola, clinical psychologist. And today I want to talk about tips for effective discipline. What is discipline? Discipline is when a person in authority, a parent, a teacher, a caregiver, exerts control over a young person with the goal of shaping their behavior. A young person, a child, is not mature enough to exercise self-control. So even if the child is complaining or whining when you ask them to do something, they actually need you to they need you as an external control to help them to shape behavior. The goal of discipline is not to punish only. The goal of discipline is actually to help to shape behavior. It's to help the young person to develop proper conduct. You want the young person to be influenced by this authority early on in life and eventually take ownership of those values for themselves. So that a time comes when they're not just doing things because somebody wants them to, but they're doing it because they know it's important to do it. So discipline is very important. It's important for the child to be sensitive to their own conscience, and that's where discipline plays a role. And control over that child is done in a way that benefits the child. And that's why it's never okay when a person disciplines and the trust and the well-being of that child is violated. Any form of discipline that is extreme and causes the child to be unsafe in any form is not effective discipline. And even though it may bring immediate compliance, in the long term, that child is being wounded and negatively impacted by this adult. So it's really important. The goal is to teach. The goal is to instruct. Now, what are some of the methods of discipline that you can use as an adult, as a parent, as a person in authority? You can give a simple command, which is, John, go and clean your room. That's a method of discipline. You're trying to shape that child's behavior by giving an order to do something specifically. If the child carries it out, you can give a reward. If they don't, you can give a consequence, which can come in form of punishment. And we'll talk a little bit more about punishment and rewards later. The second thing you can do as a form of method to discipline is use reasoning. Tell the child what the benefits are for doing that behavior and what they will lose if they don't do that behavior. You're helping the child to grow in the ability to reflect on how their behavior has consequences. The third thing that you can do as a method of discipline is talk about how the child's behavior, what they're being expected to do, impacts other people. You can talk about how that child's behavior affects their sibling, somebody else in the community, and if you're a person of faith, you can talk about, for example, how God wants somebody to be kind to their neighbor. So you can say, love your neighbor as yourself. So you're giving that child a sense that their behavior is being perceived and viewed by others, and their behavior actually does impact others. It allows the child to learn and internalize acceptable behavior. A fourth method is to withdraw attention. And you want to be careful about this. You don't want to withdraw attention when the child needs attention for things that they need for their safety or their well-being. So if the child is hungry, you don't want to ignore the child and not feed them. But let's say the child is used to getting attention when they act out. They throw a tantrum and they're used to everybody screaming or getting their attention then. You may decide that for a brief period of time, in a way that is age appropriate, that you can withdraw attention. That means in that particular time, when the child is acting up, not following directions, you withdraw attention. You can also, in terms of withdrawing attention, could be just maintaining a neutral affect. You can say something like, well, until you stop doing what you're doing, I'm not going to be able to talk right now. And you're sending the child a message that by them acting out, they're not going to get your positive attention. You're not giving them attention for what they are doing wrong. And you're teaching them that they will get more attention when they do the right thing. A fifth method is to give advice. It seems very simple, but remember the goal of discipline is to instruct. So if the child sees you as an expert, if you develop yourself in a way as a parent where your child sees you as somebody superior in knowledge and information, giving advice is a way of discipline because you're shaping behavior and you're giving advice from your life experience to your child. And then another way is also by consequences and by rewards, making the child accountable for the way they act. And I'll break this down a little bit. Telling the child, when you act this way, in a positive way, I'm going to reward you. When you act inappropriately, I'm going to give a consequence. A consequence for inappropriate behavior could be something that you take away or something you ask them to do. Let us say a child is being abusive or bullying their younger brother and you've already warned the child. A punishment could be you need to clean your sister's room, which the child hates to do. So they're doing something which is not in their normal responsibilities. Or you can take away a video game. That's a form of consequence. Try to use consequences that are easy to find within their normal activities of life, so it'll be easy for you to implement. Give a reward, like you can give a dessert, but make sure you watch the calories, right? You can give that kid 30 minutes more to play with their friend in the neighborhood, or 15 minutes more TV viewing time. Something natural that is easy to do, that makes the child to realize that it's important to follow directions. And then making the kid feel accountable is so key. Let the kid know you are in control of how happy your life is in this house or how stressful your life is in this house. So if you follow my rules, life is going to be fun. You can do your homework. You can watch your video games. You can have that extra dessert. But if you don't do it, your sisters and your brothers could be watching TV and you may have to be in your room with all the technology in your room in my closet. That way you're making the child know for everything you do, you're making the decisions for how happy things are going to be. The reason I'm sharing all these disciplinary methods is you can combine them, you can use them on their own, but if the method you're using is effective, keep using it. If one is running, your feeling is not as effective, combine. But I want you to pay attention to how you use them in an effective way. And that's what I want to talk about right now, these tips for effective discipline. Try to apply reward and consequences right after the behavior. So the child can connect that inappropriate behavior with a consequence or the appropriate behavior with a reward. Again, use something that is not too big. When I work with parents who want to buy a bike for their child, for not fighting for the next week, it's unrealistic. You can't keep that up. Because the goal, remember, is to incorporate this behavior into their normal behavior so that you won't constantly feel a need to reward. So use things in their natural environment as much as possible. That's the very first way to make sure discipline is effective. The second way, be very careful and pay attention to your child's age and developmental level. If your child is not developmentally capable of sitting still for 3 hours, you don't want to punish them for wanting to look around. If your child is 2 years old and they want to look around and smile, you can't be mad about them doing that or making some noises. Make sure that the behavior, the punishment, the discipline is developmentally consistent for that child. The third thing is make sure that what you're asking your child to do, they're actually able to do. This is somewhat connected to being developmentally appropriate. Say you're telling your child, you need to do your homework, and I work with parents on this, but there's no place to do homework in the house, and the TVs are blasting, there's so much noise. Make sure that there are no barriers in place that will prevent the child from doing what you're asking them to do. The fourth thing, it is so important for discipline to be consistent. Some parents ignore all the negative behaviors for so long. They're doing something wrong, you laugh about it. And then out of that moment when you're frustrated, then you bring all the intensity of your frustration and discipline at that point. If your disciplinary methods are erratic, it's unlikely to be effective. So be consistent. If you say, I'm going to discipline you after you do this, follow through. Don't ignore for 7 days and get mad for 1 day. It's not going to work. The bottom line is that discipline can be effective. Discipline helps to shape your child's behavior, and the overall goal of discipline is to instruct and not just to punish. I want you to be consistent in your discipline. Make sure that you're consistent with your child and respect you as an authority. The second thing is I want you to be sensitive to your child's needs while you're disciplining. Be very careful about the extreme of being too forceful. You don't want to curb your child's self-will. You don't want to take away your child's voice. You're trying to shape them. You're not trying to break them. And be very careful of the other extreme of letting your child get away with whatever. You don't want your child to be comfortable acting out the impulsive. And the third thing is be open to changing your methods of discipline. Try one thing and try something else and see what works. That's what parenting is all about. And the fourth thing is please keep a positive attitude and a positive relationship with your child. Understand that even though you're disciplining, let your child know that you truly love him or her, and discipline is so necessary for him or her to be successful in the future. If anything I've said has been helpful, let me know. Subscribe to my channel. Let's keep this conversation going. And thank you so much for listening.